Hey guys, and welcome to another tutorial for freshly squeezed samples. This is your host John Grand, and today I'm going to be showing you how to sound design pads in Serum from scratch. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and load Serum, and then we're going to start off with a initialized patch. So go ahead and click on Init Preset or Initialized Patch. I'm going to close these other windows out and rename this Pads. And one of the first things that we need to do when we're sound designing a pad is looking at the polyphony count. Now, it says here that it is recommended to keep this set as low as possible based on your usage needs so you can conserve CPU. This is very important because some computers just don't have enough processing power to be able to handle pads that just have too many voices. It says here as well that note the fraction below and keep in mind some soft cents that would have the fraction denominator be 64 to avoid customer complaints of excessive CPU. So clearly, Steve Duda there is telling us something, right? He's basically saying that if you're playing with a polyphony of 8 notes, okay, and as you can see down here, it keeps going up, and then you start turning up this unison, look at how this increases right here. As that increases, it's going to require more and more processing power. That's also going to be the case if you're also using a second oscillator and you keep adding more and more voices. So what would happen if we were to do 32 polyphony and 16 unison here and 15 there? Well, let's see how my CPU handles this. So clearly my CPU can definitely handle that pretty well, but that's not the case for everyone's computer. And also, we haven't even gotten into the release settings, right? Because when we start turning this up and we start having longer releases, the more CPU your Serum is going to consume while you're playing notes in a pad. Another thing to also keep in mind is that if you're playing one of these notes right here, this technically would be a part of a voice. And so if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right here I got 5 notes times 16 unison voices for one oscillator, 16 unison voices for oscillator B, and then I got 32 polyphony. It's going to definitely make my computer probably stall, especially when I have a lot of other things going on in my session. As you can see right there, my CPU meter just jumped from 10 to 15 just because I raised the release up a little bit. As you can see there, it's going to keep incrementing, and that's because Serum is trying to allow those notes to keep playing while every new chord is triggered. So keep that in mind, that when you're sound designing pads, try to keep your polyphony low, and also try to keep your unison low as well, at least when you're starting out. So I obviously don't need 32 polyphony for this. I could probably get away for now with 12, and the simple math would be to count how many notes I'm playing here, which is 5. Then I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as well, and then this one I believe has 6. And then from there you can kind of deduce, like, okay, I'll probably need around 12 to 16 polyphony count, so I can really make this pad work, because we're going to be needing to use this release quite a bit in order to get a proper pad sound. So outside of all that scientific stuff, let's go ahead and figure out how to sound design a pad. So we're going to start off with a simple saw wave, which we already have, but let's just go ahead and open up under the basic mini shapes and select this one right here, which is just a saw wave, and we're going to stick with that for now. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on this filter, and this filter I'm going to set to 24. So let's go ahead and set that one to 24. As you can see, the curvature on it changes, and that's where we have it at. So I'm going to leave it at 24, and let's go ahead and play this progression that we currently have. So I mean, so far that's a pretty decent start. I mean, that pad has sort of like the beginnings of what I want. But let's go ahead and turn the detune down just a little bit so that we can kind of get a bit more of a stable sound. And I'm going to set the blend to right about 85 so that they're all kind of at the same height. The blend basically just allows you to blend in the different unison notes that you're adding in with the unison knob right here. As you can see there, while you're blending in the unison, the sound really does drastically change. I'm also going to set it to 4 voices because I kind of want there to be two of the voices kind of a little bit lower than the 2 in the center. So yeah, one thing to keep in mind is that when you're adding in these voices or these unison voices, what you're essentially doing is you're telling Serum where each one of these voices should be placed. And I like starting off with 4 so I can kind of get an idea of where I want to take the sound. Now remember, at the early start of this video, this release was just like this. As you can see there, whenever the notes are changing, it's kind of too abrupt. So in order to sort of blend those notes a little bit together, we're going to have to turn up the release quite a bit. As you can hear there, the notes are playing with each other, and as the chord changes, the previous notes are still sort of gliding around, right? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to play with the attack a little bit, right? So pads, generally speaking, have sort of like this slow attack. So it just kind of rises a little bit, kind of like this. And we're going to zoom in really closely because this is sort of where the magic happens with pads, is this curvature right here, and sort of figuring out where the attack should kind of start and finish. So we're going to play around with this a little bit until we get a sound that sounds kind of more like a pad. So I think right about there is a pretty good spot. We're going to bring this curvature a little bit up. I think I'm going to turn up the release just a little bit to kind of give it a little bit more of like that, you know, pad kind of feeling. And we're going to turn up that release a little bit. Give it a nice little curve as well. Turn it down just a little bit. And I think that's a pretty good starting point. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and play with the cutoff filter, and we're going to route envelope 2 to this cutoff right here. And this is going to give us a nice little set of tools to further develop this sound. So let's go ahead and play with it a little bit. As you can see here, in the background, you can faintly see envelope 1 and what that one's doing. So if we wanted to match envelope 2 with 1, we could just kind of take a gander at the previous one and kind of copy those settings a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm also going to turn up the resonance a little bit. And I didn't really like how it sounded when I copied them, so I just kind of switched this one up a little bit on the curvature there just to kind of give it a little bit more of a different kind of flavor. Alright, so far I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and turn on our second oscillator, and we're also going to pass it through the filter. And this one I'm going to actually set to 8 voices and just see what that sounds like. That sounds pretty good. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to send an LFO to the fine tune. And one of the tricks that I like to do is to bring this down to about 25 or so and keep adjusting it until it sounds nice. And what we're doing is we're routing the LFO to the fine tuning, which will sound like this. As you can hear there, the LFO is doing its thing. I'm going to change the curvature on the LFO a little bit. And if you want it to sound more analog, then one of the things you can do is actually turn down the rate. Kind of gives you that analog gliding feel. I like it about there. I think that sounds pretty decent. Next thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit of white noise to kind of give this a little bit of like a hiss feel. So let's go ahead and bring in the Juno 106 chorus, see what that sounds like. I'm going to turn up the pitch so that it's a little bit not so low end, but it has kind of more of a higher register. We're going to put it back into the filter. And then we're going to send an LFO to this level knob for the noise. And that's going to give us a bit of like a Foley kind of effect. With this one, we're going to actually speed it up quite a bit. If you want to hear what that sounds like. And then we're going to set the rise so that the LFO takes a little bit of time for it to kick in. That just kind of adds a little bit of dirt and grit to the pads. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go over to the reverb. Now, I already have a preset set, but if you want to copy the preset settings that I have here, check this out. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some chorus. Same thing, I have a preset that I've already picked. And let's add some EQ. One trick you can do too is you can go over here and select mod wheel, and this will allow us to play with the cutoff filter directly from the mod wheel, which is this little guy right here. So now if you wanted to do something fun here, you could also come to the mod wheel and then go to the LFO, and you could play around with the LFO rate on the mod wheel. And that's just a little quick trick, But yeah. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was showing you how to create some pads from scratch in Serum. Do note that you can always change any of these sounds for different pads. So if I were to go here and just, switch out some of these wavetables, you can get some very drastically different shapes. Always experiment with adding an LFO to the wavetable position, and you can get really interesting sounds like this. And there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, had a lot of fun making it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.